Welcome to the KCG podcast, where we create the future. My name is Kayla Sawyer, and I am your host for today's podcast. Our featured guest today is Max McCormick. So, Max, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, Kayla. I have several certifications within the field, including my Microsoft Network and Security Fundamentals, along with my CompTIA Security Plus. And I've also participated in several ethical hacking competitions, such as the Great Computer Challenge, Cyber Patriot, and the STEM Trifecta.
That's awesome. Clearly, you're qualified to talk about hacking today. So, first off, why don't you explain to the listener what hacking is?
Well, the original definition of hacking is simply using something for its unintended purpose. So if you've ever heard of life hacks, then that is actually based off of the original definition. But now we use the term hacking more in computer hacking, which is simply manipulating software or hardware in a way outside of the creator's original idea or thought of the software or hardware.
That's awesome. It really helps to understand that a little bit better. So, basically, what are people intending to get out of hacking? Like, what information are they looking for?
Well, it depends on the type of hack. Most hacks nowadays are usually separated between the target, but if you're aiming for more of a big business, you'll see a lot more malware. Like Chipotle was attacked not too long ago with malware on their cash registers that targeted credit card information, while a lot of small businesses are usually targeted through phishing or other social engineering methods.
So, do you think small businesses are an easier target than, let's say, a larger corporation?
Well, definitely. I mean, a larger corporation is going to spend millions of dollars every year on cybersecurity. Hacking them is going to be extremely difficult because they hire people all the time, and that's what they do. And it's very hard to try to get into something so big. While small businesses, especially thinking that nobody's going to go for them, they're a fish in a sea of businesses, while actually hackers who go out there will look for the easier targets, which are small businesses, because they never spend nearly as much money or attention on their cybersecurity, but you could still get a lot of personal information.
So, Max, for those that aren't familiar with some of the terminology, what is the difference between malware and phishing exactly?
Well, phishing goes into the category of social engineering, which is the use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential or personal information. So you could send an email pretending to work for Google and say that your account could be compromised. You give us your password and we'll make sure you lock it down or something. And you trick somebody into giving information they normally would not give out. That's called phishing. Usually through email. That is the most common cyber attack on small businesses. Well, malware is malicious software. That is code. That is a type of software that is used to get information, steal information, send information. You've probably heard of ransomware. That's been going around a lot. That is a type of malware that shuts down your entire computer and will not let you get into your information unless you pay a ransom. There are a lot of different types of malwares, keyloggers, ransomwares. There's plenty, and then there's a lot of different types of social engineering. It goes from simple shoulder surfing or baiting, which is you get a flash drive full of malware. Social engineering and malware can work together. You get a flash drive full of malware, you leave it in the parking lot outside a business. If somebody walks out and finds it, and they want to know whose it is, so they plug it into their computer, and then that loads the malware on it, and now you've got malware on your system.
So, once a hack has occurred, how vulnerable do you think the victim is to having their information being used by the hacker? And do you think that news outlets and social media are using scare tactics to make this sound a lot more serious than it is, or is it an actual serious concern that people should be worried about?
Well, I don't think they're making it scary enough. This is something that happens all the time, and most people live in the idea that it's not going to happen to me, so I don't need to worry about it. But people actually target small businesses, which a lot of people don't understand. I know businesses of like family members who've been part of businesses who've been hit with ransomware. One person paid it off, and they got the encryption key, and they got their information back. The other person paid it off, but did not get it back, and their business completely crumbled. So it all depends. Most people, when it comes to gaining information that you will use later, such as credit card information or social security numbers or stuff like that, most hackers never professionalize and getting it and then using it. What is more common is getting it and then selling it in bulk on the dark web. You could buy anything on the dark web, from counterfeit driver license, counterfeit social security cards. You could hire people to hack into websites. There's places all over, but you could buy thousands and thousands of credit card numbers for pocket change, and you'd be very surprised, because people hack, but I mean, it's a whole other profession to learn how to use it and get the most money out of it, so they usually sell it to somebody whose profession is to use it.
So, when I was doing research on this topic, I came across the dark web and I was really unfamiliar with it. And I didn't really realize how scary it actually is because you can't shut it down. So, Max, can you explain that a little bit better about how the dark web actually works?
Well, the dark web is, when we think of the internet, we think of Google, or we think of a few things that specifically pop up, but the only part of the internet we really see are the ones that we know how to go to. We can search for. The dark web is pretty much a part of the web that you can only get to with special software, and it allows users to operate it and participate in it to remain completely anonymous and untraceable. And that can get scary. You can find some very terrifying things on the dark web, from guns to drugs to people. So there are a lot of things that you can get on there, and it's completely untraceable, and for the most part, you don't have to worry about the legal ramifications of your actions. To get on there, as a lot of people ask, it's not too difficult. It's used similar to a browser just called Tor, and you have to run it and install it in a specific way. But once you get on there, you can get access to the dark web, which is definitely a very scary place to be.
So, how do you know how vulnerable you or your company is to a cyber attack?
Well, there's no easy way to tell. One of the best ways to see how vulnerable your business is through a risk assessment. They have amazing risk assessments, like the one that KCG offers, that goes into your system, and it will tell you a bunch of things, all of which are oftentimes used and exploited in a cyber attack.
So, can you go into a little bit more detail about what the risk assessment is looking for?
Well, it goes into a lot of group policy, which it looks for a thing. Group policy is pretty much where you can enact policies that have to work on every system. For example, it would go in and look for a group policy on how long you could have a password before it has to be changed. It'll look for it, and if it's like 90 days or less, it will red flag that and say it should be changed more often. It'll look at other things like password complexity, how long your password is, stuff like that. And there's hundreds and hundreds of different things that it looks at and makes sure that they're all in a specific way that makes your business more secure.
So, we know that the risk assessment is good for measuring how vulnerable a company is to an attack, but how can someone prevent a hack from occurring?
Well, you can never completely prevent an attack from occurring. No matter how protected your system is, it's still vulnerable. There is no such thing as an impenetrable system. But there are things you could do to definitely mitigate the risk. Especially if a hacker's coming across something and it appears to be difficult, he's more likely to move on. But the the risk assessment is good at figuring out little holes in your system that help between things, but nothing can compare to what I like to emphasize a lot is employee training. A lot of the hacks that have been going on, or especially around here that I've seen firsthand, come from social engineering. And employee training, which would help prevent that significantly, is one of the best things you could do. Obviously nobody really wants to do employee training, but even if it's just a 2-day presentation where somebody comes in and presents a whole bunch of things on phishing and what to do and what not to do, that could mean the difference between a hack and not getting hacked.
So, do you think that the benefits outweigh the cost of investing in cybersecurity?
Oh, definitely. The statistic that I see everywhere is that 60% of businesses have not lasted a year after a major cyber attack. So if you want to take that gamble and save a few bucks to not have any security, that's your choice. But if you get attacked, the amount of money that you'd spend on security compared to how much money it would take to try to fix yourself after an attack is a huge difference, and chances are your business will not recover.
Well, thank you, Max, for all of your hacking insight. I think that's all for this episode. And thank you for tuning in to the KCG podcast. And we look forward to sharing more information with you on our next episode. Visit the KCG website to learn more about our risk assessment and employee training that we mentioned in this episode. You can do that at www.kcg-inc.net. And follow KCG on social media. The links are in the description. If we missed any questions or topics that you would like to know more about, send us a message or comment below, and we'll be sure to include it in our next podcast. That's all for now, and we look forward to creating the future with you.